I'm Charity Mainwaring, and this is Strong Stories, where we tell the tales of inspiring and gritty women from history who changed the world. Which women from history do you most admire? Let me know in the comments right now. I'd love to hear from you. Today we're going to talk about a woman you've likely heard of as a rescuer of slaves with the Underground Railroad. But did you know that she was also a high-level spy, a military scout, and a clever trickster? Meet Harriet. Here's her story. At 3 in the morning on June 2nd, 1863, along the Combahee River in rural South Carolina, the stillness of the summer night was broken by the sudden arrival of two armored gunboats. Confederate troops stationed to protect this crucial breadbasket were on the lookout, as rumors had been flying around for days of an imminent raid. As the defenders rode off to sound the alarm, they observed a strange sight. The tall company of invaders in Union blue gathered on the riverbank, and with them, a slight figure in a long green dress. Harriet Tubman had scouted the area for days and knew exactly where to lead the men. The raid was a smashing success. By the time it was over, 756 slaves were freed. 8 plantation mansions were going up in smoke, and with them, 10,000 bushels of rice essential to the Confederate war effort. Harriet's one regret was the dress, which she tore to shreds, helping a young mother with a small child to feed carry 2 pigs back to the gunboats. I made up my mind then I would never wear a long dress on another expedition of the kind. They laughingly named the pigs Beauregard and Jeff Davis after the Confederate general and president against whom Tubman's leadership had just struck such a powerful blow. From the moment of her birth in the early 1820s, Harriet was considered property in the slaveholding state of Maryland. Minty, as she was known as a child, learned a life-changing lesson when she witnessed her mother save her son Moses, Harriet's brother, from being sold down to Georgia by threatening to split open the head of any man who tried to take him. The Georgia slave owner decided that the boy just wasn't worth it and gave up. Such victories, though, were few and far between. Harriet's owner rented her out for profit, and once, when she was just 6 years old, the infant Harriet was supposed to keep quiet kept crying, no matter how hard she tried to soothe it. Harriet was beaten mercilessly for every sound the baby made. On another occasion, Harriet was whipped 5 separate times before breakfast because no one had shown this young child how to properly clean a plantation house, and the matron believed her mistakes were deliberate. Harriet carried the scars of that morning's torture on her body the rest of her life. As a teenager, Harriet received a near-fatal wound while standing protectively over another slave who had angered their overseer. The overseer hurled a 2-pound weight at the man, but it missed and cracked Harriet's skull. She was denied medical attention for days. She lived, but for the rest of her life, she suffered intense headaches, seizures, and narcolepsy, which worsened with age. In 1844, Harriet married John Tubman, a free black man, and changed her name to Harriet Tubman. For years, Harriet had experienced frequent visions, which she attributed to God. In some, horsemen were coming, and she heard women and children scream as they were dragged off into even worse forms of slavery. In others, she saw a line, on the far side of which were green fields and flowers and ladies to welcome her, but she could never reach that line. Harriet found hope in Bible stories, especially that of Moses leading the Hebrews out of slavery in Egypt. She now believed God was urging her to seek her freedom, but when she confided this to her husband, he called her a fool. 5 years later, the dark visions seemed to come true when Harriet heard word that she was to be dragged off that night and forced into labor on a chain gang. That evening, as she walked the fields with the others, she made up her mind what she had to do. Determining that it was too risky to say goodbye outright, she lifted up her voice in a familiar spiritual. "When that old chariot comes, I'm going to leave you. I'm bound for the promised land." The night was clear, and Harriet began picking a careful path through the shadows, recalling later that she had no plan other than to follow the North Star to freedom. She moved by night and hid by day. One day, nearly a month later, Harriet's cautious inquiries brought her the sudden realization she had crossed over into free Pennsylvania. When I found I had crossed that line, I looked at my hands to see if I was the same person. There was such a glory over everything. The sun came like gold through the trees. I felt like I was in heaven. But Harriet's hard-earned peace was not to last. She enjoyed pay for her labor for the first time in her life. But Harriet's elation in her newfound freedom turned to grief on behalf of her family, still in bondage. I was free, and they should be free. Terrible news reached her in Philadelphia. Her niece, a mother of 2 young children, was soon to be sold away from her family. Slaves in Maryland were usually sold into far worse conditions in the Deep South. But what could Harriet do? Recaptured slaves were often whipped to death as an example to others. It would be madness to let her feet cross that line back into the land of slavery. Before long, the rumor proved true. Harriet's niece was auctioned off to the highest bidder, a free black man. The white owner who had sold her turned his back for a moment for a bite to eat, and before anyone knew it, the successful bidder had disappeared with Harriet's niece and both her children without paying for any of them. No one at the auction suspected that the man was really her husband. The whole scheme was concocted by Harriet. The family crept up the Maryland coast in a log raft, arriving in Baltimore, where Harriet was waiting for them to lead them to safety along the Underground Railroad, which was a network of people and safe houses who led slaves to freedom in the North. Do you think Harriet stopped there? The venture only whetted her appetite for more. She returned to the South at least 18 more times, risking her life every time before the outbreak of Civil War 11 years later, leading about 300 people to freedom. Harriet recalled hiding from dogs and armed men. Sometimes the hot pursuit passed within feet of her. On one occasion, she traveled on a rail car while inadvertently sitting under her own wanted sign. Unable to read, she overheard curious passersby examining the sign and discussing the price on her head, $12,000, or about $200,000 in today's money. These harrowing experiences caused some of the escaped slaves that she was guiding to lose heart and ask to go back. Harriet recorded later that she felt the need to pull her pistol on these fearful escapees and force them to go on. This prevented vital information about the Underground Railroad from falling into the hands of slave owners. At the end of her career, she could remark with pride that unlike most trained conductors, not one of her passengers was ever lost. When Civil War broke out in 1861, Harriet volunteered as a nurse and laundress with the Union Army. It soon became clear, though, that few Americans, if any, knew more of infiltration and concealment tactics behind enemy lines than Harriet. As a result, she found herself at the head of a network of spies who scouted deep into Confederate territory and passed vital information to Federal troops. During the Combahee River Raid in June 1863, she became the first American woman to lead troops into battle. After the war, Harriet received little recognition or pay for all her efforts. In 1869, when a train conductor demanded she give up her seat even after she showed him her ticket, Harriet had an arm broken as she tried to hold on to the seat she had paid for. An angry crowd gathered and threw her into the baggage car, causing further injuries. Despite her poverty, Harriet found ways to travel the country, spoke to large crowds on behalf of women's right to vote, and opened a care home for aging African Americans. The image of a 70-something-year-old Harriet literally biting a bullet as a surgeon sawed open her skull without anesthesia to relieve pain from her youthful head injury vividly encapsulates her life of grit, perseverance, and faith. As of the publication of this video in 2021, plans are underway to see Harriet Tubman on the $20 bill, a fitting tribute to a remarkable American hero. Thank you so much for watching. Please hit the like and subscribe button, hit the bell so you get notified when I post new videos, and let me know in the comments below what other heroic women from history you would like to hear about. Remember, you can do hard things. Be strong, be fierce.